Hello, it's the TheMagneticPodcast, here for episode 2. And today we are going to be talking about getting up after failure. This is a very important topic because this is something that we're all going to face. We won't ace every test that we face in our life 100% all of the time. Therefore, whenever we fail, it's vital that we respond correctly and in a way where we can get back up and go back to our grind as if nothing ever happened. I'm going to be discussing 10 points that I think are critical for responding to failure the correct way so that instead of just giving up on our goals, we can put our failures behind us and actually go all the way to the peak of whatever goal we have set. Like, envision the goal as a mountain. The goal is to get to the top. It doesn't matter how long it takes, but the goal is to ultimately get there. Point 1. Give up self-blame. Give up self-blame. Now, why do I emphasize that? Because self-blame is a problem that a lot of people in our culture face. Whenever they make a mistake, instead of acknowledging it as a mistake and seeking to improve, they see the mistake, and instead of just seeing that as a poor performance, they'll take it personally as a failing on their part as an individual. And this mindset is limited for multiple reasons. First off, it might not even be true. Well, there are times where procrastination and just a lack of moral character are the driving forces in failure. Sometimes it's circumstances that change and we just weren't able or mature enough to adapt to those at our current level in our growth and in our stature. So I think it's important to understand, while we need to take personal responsibility, there's no doubt that you need to take personal responsibility. You don't hate yourself in response to that. Instead, what you do is you understand the failing and acknowledge it as such. Don't acknowledge it as something terrible that says that you're an irredeemable person, that's a sinner, that's incapable of anything good. Because that mindset is very self-destructive. And one thing that I've really learned is what you believe about yourself is often what you become. So if you believe that you're this irredeemable sinner who has no good in them, that'll manifest itself in actions, words, and most importantly, behavior. Considering this, giving up self-blame and being able to assess accurately the situation, not just eternal doubt and blame that you have for yourself, is a critical skill that I think is vital to learn whenever working on any big project, because things will go amiss sometimes. The second point here is fail faster. That's right, fail faster. So, what does that exactly mean? Why would I be telling you to fail faster? That seems absolutely ridiculous and absurd. Well, this principle isn't uniquely my own. In fact, part of my ambitions of being a game developer has drawn me to Extra Credits, an excellent YouTube channel that features history, teaching about gaming mechanics, even delving into politics a little. But one of the principles that has stuck with me to this day is the fail faster mentality. And I think this is such a powerful mentality because of the acceptance of risks that you're willing to take whenever you get into this mentality. Not every idea of yours is going to be the next iPad, the next Facebook, the next Twitter, the next Snapchat. It's just not. You're not going to build a nation and it just be America overnight. A lot of things go through duds, and it takes a lot of time and consistent effort to figure out what you really need. And some people are so perfectionistic that they could have had great experiences creating multiple things, but they're obsessed with this one thing, and they need it to be so perfect that it's never going to be released. And if it does, if it's a dud, then they're going to think that all that precious time got wasted, and then they get in the mentality, well, if I failed my first time, who's to say it won't happen again and again? And that's a very scarce mindset. And really what you want to do is live in an abundance mentality, where I have so much time and I'm giving this. I'm not giving from scarcity. I'm not giving from the mindset that I'm running out of time. I'm gifting my time into this project because I think it's a good idea and it'll be satisfying to work on something with my hands and bring it to reality. And I think that's a very important mindset to have. Though, there's a certain realism in this fail faster thing too. A lot of your ideas just aren't going to be perfect. For example, if you have a game idea, it's a great idea to make a small prototype. Don't invest into major graphics to make it look good if you don't even know that the project you're working on is fun yet. That idea is fundamentally flawed and will make you waste a lot of unnecessary money that could have been avoided if you just failed faster. Kept it simple, saw if it worked. If it didn't, that's fine. Move on to the next thing. Because let's say you have something like No Man's Sky. That was an infamous game for a while. Well, the concept sounded great. A lot of players just saw it as a repetitive and boring thing after a while. And if this would have been realized earlier, perhaps they could have fixed it and made it better. And they had to spend a whole lot of resources making it better whenever they could have just kept it simpler. And while in the end everything worked out, it would have saved them a whole lot of problems in the end. And I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. Whenever you're working on something, let's say you have a book idea, okay? Just pour everything into a first draft. But if it isn't good upon that first draft, don't try to mindlessly salvage it until it's readable for a general audience. That's not a good idea. And this will also help you find the good ideas. Because whenever you stop wasting all of your time into a so-called precious idea that turns out to be a dud, whenever you can quickly move on to something else, whenever you realize that, okay, this isn't going anywhere, you can find the Facebook that perhaps you were meant to create, or something of that caliber. So just keep an open mind to this fail faster principle. Don't be so caught up on waiting for all the circumstances to be right or everything to be perfect, because that ideal world that you want to do this in doesn't exist. People, we don't live in an ideal world. And it's important to acknowledge that as such. The third principle here is create accountability. Create accountability. Why do we do this? Well, for multiple reasons. First, when we fail, let's say for something that we know needs to happen. Like, there's no debating. It's not like an idea thing. It's not like, okay, I want to write this book. Here's an idea. Let's say it's something that would be good for everybody, like going to the gym or eating right. Those are pretty indisputable good ideas that the fail faster principle might not be so important for, in general, for example, let's say the Phil Faster principle with that would be, okay, she can try the vegan diet for so long, but if it doesn't work, move on to the next thing after. But this create accountability is so good for the things that you know need to change. For example, if you're a diabetic that feels better, has normal blood sugar levels while eating keto, at that point you know what you need to do. It's just a matter of doing it. And in those scenarios, creating accountability is necessary, especially in these times of failure. Because with something like diet, every day is going to be a temptation. Every day you're going to maybe desire a food that you shouldn't eat or that you'll regret eating. And with that, you need accountability for those days. Because whenever it's just you can do whatever you want. And that can be a blessing as well as a curse. Being able to do whatever you want creates freedom, but it also creates a temptation and a challenge you have to overcome. So let's say you need to stick to a certain diet. If you have a significant other to hold you accountable to that diet, maybe even do it with you, then you're going to have far more success than the person who is only accountable to themselves and nobody is affected if they fail. For example, if you have a goal of losing weight, then it doesn't matter if it's just you. However, if you are going to die because you eat compulsively, you're going to get high cholesterol, have a heart attack. I know science on that one's shoddy, but if that's the future that you're currently going towards, then I'd say it's absolutely necessary that you create accountability. And this isn't just with a person like, hey, Sarah or Mary or whatever, like, I'm gonna be doing this, I'm gonna need you to be checking up on me. Every now and then, this, I'd say family members can be, because you're going to have to deal with them, it's a great way to do it. Maybe also just getting into a program, like, let's say, people who have addiction issues, they go to Alcoholic Anonymous. If your goal is, like, something not related to that, not quitting a bad habit, but starting a new habit, like going to the gym, perhaps getting involved with, like, a gym club that meets and that just keeps you to it. It keeps it consistent. And you're comparing yourself to others, and you're going to be more incentivized not to let yourself fall down on the hierarchy. And this can be a powerful tool, just because if you're only accountable to yourself, then once you really have those days where you could care less, then you're not going to do it. However, nobody goes to their job and it's like, well, I'm really not feeling work today. I'm not feeling it. Are you feeling it? Maybe Warren Buffett can afford that, but he's Warren freaking Buffett, so who cares at that point? So that's the third tip. Now we're going to move on to the fourth tip. 4, be adaptable. Being adaptable is crucial because life is ever changing. What works tomorrow and what works today are almost in a different universe. And a lot of people get so stuck up on having something completed a certain way. Perhaps, my chapter only has 20 pages, but all the books I've read from my favorite authors have had long books, so I need long chapters. While it is good to stick to conformity to some extent, because going too far can make people uncomfortable, it is important to recognize that being adaptable is necessary. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a reason why certain things are the way they are. Books are generally long, especially of the self-help caliber. They're usually around 20,000 to 40,000 words. But if, actually 40,000 to 50,000. But if you have like a 20,000 word book, and that's what you have to say, and that's what you have to contribute out there, don't try to conform to people just because that's what people expect. The people who invented the rules were not following the rules at the time. And that's important to keep in mind, because a lot of people, they get so stuck up that whenever things change, they just can't adapt. Like, for example, oh, I'm traveling. I don't know if I can really stick with this diet while I'm out traveling. Yeah, you can, but you're going to have to be adaptable and make some sacrifices. But a lot of people will be like, oh, I can't. I just can't. You know, Thanksgiving's coming up. I can't stay within my caloric goal. It's like, yeah, you can, but you're going to have to be adaptable. Perhaps lesser of a temptation, however that may be. Perhaps set a limit, like I can only eat so many plates. Something of that sort. Or perhaps if you're into fasting, you're like, okay, I'll eat out like on Thanksgiving, and for the next 2 to 3 days, I'll be making up for it by cutting the calories. Maybe I'll do a fast day. And a lot of people get tripped up on this too. Like, let's say they have a goal of doing 200 push-ups a day. They miss a day, and then it's just like, I can't find the motivation to do it anymore now that I'm not maintaining a streak. And it's like, yes, you can do it. But you have to be adaptable. So, okay, so we couldn't do 200 push-ups today. Well, while that's not good, we can make it up. How about we do 250 the next 4 days? No, the next 4 to 8 days, and that'll make up for it. We're putting more pressure. If we're doing the 8 days thing, we're going to be making more than up for it. And it's going to be great. But a lot of people get stuck in this mindset of, oh, now that I messed up once, there's no point in doing it. And it's like, it's better to mess up once and then get back on track than to mess up once and never get back on track. Now we're moving on to point 5. Point 5. Understand implications. Understanding implications saves you so much time. Some people, they are so risk adverse that they just jump into things having no clue what it entails. And while there's a certain respectable honor in that, I definitely think it can be useful, especially if it's just something that you're trying, let's say a diet, or a non-consequential thing that probably she won't be doing long-term anyway, like let's say a temporary fitness challenge. I think it's great just to jump into it and see what happens. To a certain extent, that's great, but especially with career goals, understanding implications saves you so much. For example, let's say she's writing a book. If you understand the amount of money she needs saved up before, if you ever dream of getting that published. Or let's say you're planning on making a video game. Even. That can take years out of her life, and understanding the implication and what that entails is so vital, especially if it's something that she could be working on for a long time. And one of the reasons why I find this so important is definitely whenever I started my book, I did not understand the implications. I didn't know that whenever you quoted somebody, that would take extra time in publishing, and I've been editing my things accordingly in order to ensure that I can make the best book possible while also not wasting time, because time is precious and you only have so much of it to give. And it's important to operate from a mindset of abundance while also realizing whenever time is being wasted. Because maybe we're not at a point in her life where she can devote 8 hours of every day to work on a video game that can be done in a year or two. Some people aren't ready to make that type of commitment yet, and so you have to understand what you're getting yourself into. For example, if you don't understand what you're doing whenever you start working on a game that you plan to sell for commercial release, that's going to screw you over in the long run. Whenever, sure, a couple months into it, and you just don't have the time anymore. She don't have the money to keep on working on this. Like, perhaps if you research Kickstarter and alternative funding so that she could stay afloat while she were in this research grind and really doing the best you can, it would have saved a lot of resources while also allowing you to serve the project better. So, one of the ways that I think she can really benefit from this is obviously books and listening to presentations by people that have really had experience in whatever industry that you're trying to get into. And this can minimize failure, but it also can, ironically, stop bad ideas, and really it goes back into the fail faster principle where you weed out bad ideas quickly. Moving on to our 6th point, self-confidence. Self-confidence is one of those crucial things that I think it's misunderstood a lot. Most people consider fake confidence in yourself the same as self-confidence. Self-confidence is whenever everything can go wrong. You could become bankrupt, have all the resources disappear, and have nothing go right at all in your project, and still remain confident and assured in yourself. That's what true self-confidence is. And it's one of those important virtues that I'd say is necessary to attain. Because if you do not have self-confidence, what inevitably will happen? Once you fail, we're going to enter that phase of self-blame that we talked about in point 1, but more importantly, it's going to destroy your frame of yourself in your mind. And to put this simply, a frame in your mind is kind of like the wave you see yourself. Like, imagine looking through a window with a filter set to it. That's kind of, and imagine seeing yourself. That's kind of how your worldview has you view yourself. And if you lack this crucial virtue, then whenever everything goes wrong, if it does, then it's no longer, oh crap, I don't know what I'm doing, I give up. It turns into, I'm a little worried about how everything's going. But at the end of the day, I believe I can reach my goals and get there in spite of everything. And you might think that sounds pretty simple but unrealistic. And to be fair, it is, and that's for most people, and that's because self-confidence doesn't grow on a tree, you know. It can't just be grown overnight. It's not like going to the supermarket, and you can't get it from a different source. As the name suggests, it's not confidence, it's self-confidence. And that means it has to come from within. And a lot of people, religious, non-religious, alike, hate the idea of going within themselves. And I actually think this is a pretty interesting topic, because in the Bible, in Genesis 32:30, God saw God face to face. Jacob saw God face to face, and he called the land Peniel. And the pineal gland actually gets activated during meditation. And this is pretty significant because meditation is whenever you go within yourself, and melatonin is a skin lightener. So by going within yourself through practice lists like meditation, you might be filled with light. And later in the Gospels, it actually talks about being filled with light by seeing through the single eye, and the pineal gland is often called the third eye. And that's just an interesting little tangent. But it's even religious scriptures see the necessity to go within, and I think that's fascinating. And it really shows a lot on how important this is. That's carried around in religions, whether that be through the third eye, pineal, the single eye, as in the Gospels, or however it's described. And it's such an interesting thing, but it's been preserved for a reason, and I think we should respect that and try to apply these principles so that whenever push comes to shove, we know how to respond. And as the enlightened one, or Buddha, or that philosopher who made the Eightfold Path, one of the ways that he described it is there's a cup, okay? And at the bottom is sediment. Now, whenever you stir the cup with sediment in it muddies up the whole water. And I like to think of the sediment as the chaos of life being stirred up and being brought to the surface. But a cup with no sediment at the bottom, she can stir all day long, but the cup's going to stay clean. And that's such a powerful lesson to learn, is that whenever you go within yourself and build up that confidence, you're getting rid of all of that self-blame and sentiment that gets built up during life. And no matter what life throws at you, you have this underlying confidence that nothing can break. And it's amazing. Now let's move to point 7. Rid yourself of distractions. Yes, rid yourself of distractions during this time. Whenever you face a major failure, it's sometimes easy to get lost in the trap of procrastinating, or what Napoleon Hill calls inaction, which I consider the biggest sin of them all. And this is something that Jordan B. Peterson actually talks about quite a lot, is that the meaning of sin is to miss the mark. And the temptation whenever you miss the mark initially is to just go further down that path and sin some more. Let's say you had a cheat day and it just was a major failure for you. It was unplanned. Things went awful. Sure, she had way too much to eat. The temptation could be like, oh man, who needs this diet anyway? And you're trying to suppress her emotions through this food that ironically was causing me the pain in the first place. And you try to temporarily mask it with these distractions. And that just leads to further inaction, whether that be through YouTube, gambling, drugs, really any social media or internet novelty item. It's like, this path only leads further down that path. And you're either spiraling upwards or spiraling downwards. And that's an important lesson to learn, as you want to be making sure that you're spiraling upwards. And whenever responding to failure, it's very easy to go down the rabbit hole and have more failures after another until your life's crashing down and you're like, what happened? I've put on 5 pounds, drinking beers up the kazoo, and it's just ridiculous. And part of the reason why she had this temptation is because the self-confidence of yours is non-existent, because you haven't worked up going within yourself, so you have this self-blame that keeps on nagging you, and you're trying to escape it. And that's why, if you don't have accountability, then it's just going to be a disaster. And those people who are really unadaptable, whenever they fell in their changes, what ends up happening is they go right back to how they are. It's ridiculous. And it's sad to watch too, because these people, most of the time, don't even realize what they're doing until it's too late. So I wouldn't make fun of these people. I feel sad for them because most of the time, they don't realize how bad it is until somebody points it out. And at that point, it's arguably too late. Anyway, and that's why I say go within yourself. Clear the sediment. Make that self-confidence strong so that you don't have to go to vices to try to feel good, normal. So you can just keep on going at it like it never happened. This next point number 8, is take a break. Taking a break, especially for those artsy people out there, and those creative types, is sometimes a necessary step that we fail to do. Some of us love our projects so much that even whenever we have nothing to give, we try our best to create something, and it just becomes stagnant and routine at this point, and we lose our drive and passion for it all. And this happens because instead of living a life with abundant experiences, we end up seeing our work as something that's holding us back. You hear sometimes people who just hate their jobs. And to me, it's one of the most frustrating things, because if you hate it, then why are you doing it? But you have to understand that sometimes it's not even that they hate it, it's just that it's so much of an average routine that it's quite boring for them at this point. And they're so stuck in this routine that they've lost the fire. And how do you get the fire back? By filling it up with new life experiences. And by living the life in which you want to have your dream life. And people are afraid to do this. People get stuck in routine. They have a certain fondness in the comfort, even if in the end it's killing them. And it's terrible, but it's true. And sometimes, to get perspective, you need to take a step back. Now, I'm not saying take a step back and binge Stranger Things Season 2 on Netflix. I'm saying take a break, fill it up with new life experiences that you can use to further your overall goal. If the diet has started to feel like routine, like nothing's changing, no progress is being made, try something new. Get new food. Try intermittent fasting. Do the keto thing if you think it's going to work for you. Think a more low carb thing, but not keto, Atkins. Let's say you love the carbs and you think a vegan lifestyle is the best for you. Go for it. It's your life, and fill your life with these experiences that take a break from the routine while also furthering your goal. If you wanted to know if skydiving would be cool in the video game and how you should program it, imagine how much fun it would be to actually go experience that. And it's something that's overlooked a lot in this go, go, go culture. People just think, okay, just have some free time on YouTube or something like that. But it's more than that you have to have. And people don't realize that, and I think it's just something that needs to be pointed out. Now let's go to number 9. Get back up. Get back up. This is necessary. And sometimes, while taking a break can be good, it needs to be coupled with the rid yourself of distractions. But after a certain point, enough is enough. You need to get back up and go on the grind. This is pretty simple. Once the time of reflection, seeing what happened, what she needed to change, let's say she had a fell faster situation where the idea was a dud, she'd get back up and she'd go find success. Failure is temporary. There's this quote I love from Winston Churchill. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. And that's a beautiful quote that I think really needs to stay in our minds. Because you could lose all the material things in a day. Let's say the market crash in 2008. A lot of people lost a lot of material things that day. But ultimately, you need to get back up. And this is the most important point in my opinion, and I saved it for last. Number 10. Love your grind. Loving your grind is the single best thing you can do for yourself. I hear so many people thinking, discipline. How on earth could anybody love that? And the thing is, most people don't at first. But ultimately, your grind should be something that you love. And it's a necessary thing to love because whatever your goals are, it's going to depend on you loving your grind. With me, the cold showers, meditation, and intermittent fasting. If I didn't love that grind and what it did for my life, I wouldn't do any of it. And did I love all of them at first? No. But I wouldn't be doing any of them still if I didn't love them. And that's an important thing. A lot of people, they'll give up because they're not doing something because they have the desire to do it. A lot of people who go into dieting, that sort of thing, they're not going to diet because, that's what's best for me. No, they're doing it because they're afraid of how society will judge them if they keep on putting on the weight. You need to learn how to give up the social powers you've given on to other people, place it back on yourself, and you have to learn to love and accept your grind, and make your grind worthy of loving and accepting. And this has been Responding to Failure Accurately, the top 10 list from the Magnetic Podcast. I hope you're enjoying the series so far, and will continue sticking with us. See you next time.